shifts from struggle to ease, from stagnation to forward movement, from old ways of being to new ways of becoming. Yes, it can seem rather elusive to get there, but when you are in it, you feel it down to your very core, and it can positively affect everything in your life, from your relationships to your health and well-being, from your career path to your abundance, from the quality of your inner connection to the fullness of your self-expression. Here on the Kryon Upchurch Show, we explore ways to get into that vibration of change with experts in the fields of consciousness, psychology, spirituality, health, healing, and science. Are you ready to step into your vibration of change?
Welcome to the Kryon Upchurch Show here on KKNW AM 1150 in the Seattle area and on Transformation Talk Radio around the world. I'm so excited that you're joining us here today, and I'm going to tell you why here in a minute. But before we go any further, I want to say hello to the master of the technology behind this right now, Olivia. Hi, Olivia.
Hi there.
Thank you for showing up for this, and thank you, Benny, after the fact for helping to air this. We're doing a pre-record today, and I'm so excited about this show. I have to tell you, of all the people I like to talk to, and there's so many, and I'm so blessed. Right now, at this moment in time, the top on my list happens to be with us today. He has this amazing perspective of what's going on in the world, and he's also probably the most famous channeler in the world. And combining that deep wisdom with the reality of what's happening in our physical realm is something that is very beneficial right now. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about our guest today. Our guest today is the channeler of Kryon, Lee Carroll. Now, Lee channels the Earth's magnetic master, Kryon. He's the author of many, many books, Kryon books, Indigo Children books, and his books have been printed in something like 24 different languages around the world. He's channeled Kryon to the United Nations on multiple occasions, and it's interesting because he comes from this rational background. He got a degree in business and economics. He was an audio engineer for many years with his own business. And then after an unusual series of events, he began to channel Kryon. And Kryon has great wisdom, and Kryon has predicted many things that have already occurred. And he's had some things to say about what's going on here in 2020. I'm so grateful to have our guest here today, Lee Carroll. Hey, Lee.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. You said something that was so funny when you said I'm the most famous channeler in the world. You know what that means is I am the most famous strange person in the world. And I don't really think that's so. But it's interesting, you know, when you put it into perspective of what that really means.
Right. Well, it's funny. It's funny, Lee, because years ago, before I went into energy healing, I heard a voice tell me multiple times, "You're a healer." And after dealing with kind of wrestling with my ego, like I'm not worthy to do that sort of thing, you know, and getting through that, I thought, but I could never dress like that, you know, thinking that healers had to be a certain way, right? The flowy skirts and the ankle bracelets and the aroma of jasmine. And then I realized that there's something very beneficial to open people up to a greater reality if you're grounded in, you know, a more rational-based perspective and a more rational history, as opposed to just like coming out of the gate woo-woo, you know. And that's something I really respect about you, that you shifted from this rational place, this successful business, and you opened to this wonderful Kryon.
When people had happened back then, they say, at what point were you converted to the new age? And I would say that didn't happen. I am still a rational guy with a man brain. I'm still a nerd. Right. And what happened is that God got bigger for me, and everything got bigger. I realized we did not have the whole story. And that's where it started.
Yeah, and I really love that perspective because to me, I know some people really love to think of spirituality and this other realm as this big mystery. To me, it's just science that hasn't been explored or proven yet. So, okay, I'd love to get your perspective, Lee, as a human living through COVID-19, what it's been like. Because I know that when this was happening, you were teaching up in Iceland. Tell us a little bit about what unfolded.
We normally go on tours in foreign countries, and Iceland was one place we'd never been before. We took about 100 people up there for maybe a 10-day tour with Shaloha Productions, which does our tours. And it was awesome. And halfway through, this happened. In fact, one of the things that was really significant is that they closed the United States for anybody but citizens, and some of the other countries were closing. And many of our attendees, we worried whether they even get back or not. Iceland is just an awesome place. We want to go back. My partner, Monica, had to stay there. She's there now because she couldn't get back in the United States because they wouldn't. She has a legal visa, but she was not a U.S. citizen. And she couldn't get back to Australia where she lives because they closed the border. So she is still there. All of this we hope to resolve now, but that's really where we were when all this happened. We got out and on Icelandic Air got into Boston with 14 people on the airplane. They took our temperature when we arrived. Here we go. So,
yeah. I never expected us to go here. I've been feeling for a while that something big was coming. And I know that Kryon's talked about that, and we'll talk more about that. But it's come as a bit of a surprise to a lot of people, even in this alternative realm, people who are open to the bigger picture. And yet, on some level, it makes a lot of sense. Tell us a little bit about what Kryon had said about this year and what Kryon had predicted that's been coming true.
I would say the predictions of Kryon is not, we don't like to call them predictions. It's more of what Kryon has said even from the beginning. And the biggest one has been the changes after 2012. And he's continued to say now for 31 years, as I've been doing this up to 2012, what's going to happen. And he even calls it the new normal. And after 2012, he said, look to things that you never would expect. And this is where we are. And if you take a look at where we are and you start itemizing what has happened, what is happening after this, you start to realize this is significantly different because there's no model for this.
Right.
There's nothing, not even a war would have done this to us. In fact, a war would have devastated everything. It didn't, the economy or whatever. People are starting to do modeling on what's going to happen afterwards. And I just laugh because what model exactly are they going to use? Yeah. And the ones that really I get entertained with is because I have a degree in economics, are all those people who are saying, well, this is awful and we're going into the depression and it's going to last for years and all that. There is no model for this. The stock market was not destroyed. What is going to happen is first of all, we are at zero. We went to zero in order to go to a place that even psychologists and psychiatrists tell you've got to go to if you're in fear or anxiety or dysfunction or things are not working. A psychiatrist will tell you, look, you get off the grid, stop the phone calls, stop the internet, all these things, go walk in the forest and come back in a week and say all of this stuff, you got to drop it in order for you to reevaluate what's going on in your life in order to get out of the anxiety and the fear. And if you take a look at that, every single aspect, when you're talking about economics, personal, you're talking about politics or whatever, is going to have to start again in a new way. Right. And you can call it whatever you want to, but this is a reboot. And it's when I say there's no model for this, watch, because when we start coming back, you're going to see certain kinds of things that are not operating the way they were before because we got a chance to see what doesn't work. Take a look at, for instance, what may even happen, the statistics you're going to see perhaps for relationships or all these things when they realize, okay, this isn't working. And I always knew it wasn't working. So when this is over, we're going to change things. And that has to do with everything. It's not just personal. It has to do with politics. It has to do with business. When we reopen, they're saying that a lot of the stores won't reopen. And Kryon actually channeled, that's because there were too many stores. In other words,
Yeah.
The economics, the systemic issues we had couldn't be resolved with the bloating we had. A lot of people said we were headed for economic disaster. There's books about that.
Right.
Now we're taking a look at this reboot. We're coming back with those systemic things altered. There's no model for this.
Yeah.
And when we start coming back, you're going to see some things you didn't expect. The economy is ready to come back. We're ready.
And one of the things I found so fascinating is, although some people have seen, some of the great dysfunction in our world, and I'm thinking specifically about in our country, I think that this whole pandemic is illuminating for us in very clear ways that cannot be propagandized in one way or another. It's like, it's just truth laying out there. And it's indicating that we can't go back to the same normal and accept it, because we know that it's not functional and it's not sustainable. And I think about, how you talked about some stores closing. We've been into over-consumerism for so long, and that's not sustainable on our planet.
No, and you might ask, well, why did they open in the first place? That's a whole different story, and I can answer that too, because I know, we've studied this, is that they get on a treadwheel in a corporate way of opening things and doing things, even without a sustainable model to do it. And suddenly they're bloated. And then they have to realize, with the economy, even the best economy we've had, you start to see all these closings. You knew something was up even then. So when we come back, it's going to be lean and mean. Also, can I just mention, because I'm on my soapbox, and I don't want to go too far on this because every interview I've ever done, but also you're going to see our news media is broken. All they're doing is giving you fear and anxiety. Turn off the television, will you?
Yeah.
This has to be fixed. There's going to be a comeuppance. There's going to be an evaluation of how they have scared us to death. They haven't given us hope. They haven't given us the truth. Every single media outlet I've seen does not give us the finish line. They just, here's the infected, here's the death. Let's move on and talk about how awful it is. And I want to say, where is the recovery column? 99% of every single virus case recovers. 99%. I want to see the recovery stats. They're not there. I want to see hope. Not there,
It's interesting to me because, Lee, probably about 15 to 20 years ago, I got direct guidance, inner guidance, that I was to stay away from the news. And then back in 2017, I got guidance to pay close attention to the news. And so for me, I was starting to see some of the things that were being illuminated in terms of the government corruption and things. And I don't really understand why it was I was supposed to pay attention. But once the pandemic started, and I started to continue watching some of the bits of shows that I'd watched before, I've had to turn it off because it really isn't showing the bigger picture. And
it isn't at all. No.
Yeah.
They compete. They compete with each other for how bad things are, so they can sell things. This is what do you say? I don't want to make the news wrong. I'll just say that you're in a paradigm of consumerism we've always been in. You have an entertainment show that you call the news, and you never changed it. This was serious. This was serious, and we're in trouble. The whole earth wants to hear hope, good news, at the same time, truth. Thank you. But there are two sides to all of this. We only got one.
And when thinking about truth, I've seen a wide array of perspectives on how this developed, how COVID-19 occurred. And before we get into the bigger picture of how this serves us, has Kryon said anything about, where this came from? Did it just jump from a bat in a bowl of soup to a human, or was there something else going on?
Yes, he did. And I'm not, Kryon has never been a conspiracy thing, and he's been very cloaked in what he said. But he says it will be coming out. This was the virus is natural. It's come from animals. It was in the lab, but he says it didn't just get out. He said it was released, and he didn't say on purpose. And he says it was totally accidental, but it shouldn't have been where it was. And now we're starting to get into some things on the news where even some government officials are saying the So it's going to show itself in appropriate release. And it was not to, on purpose to change the world and get us sick. It was just stupid and careless, and it shouldn't have been where it was. And this is where you're going to find these things out. This is what Kryon said while he was in Iceland. He said, the virus is not political. Take a look at where it went first. Take a look at the countries that were infected first, and it's going to give you a good idea of who might have had it inappropriately.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And I know that there was, what do they call that? The research where they take a virus and they try to advance it to see how it's going to behave, for the purpose of science and maybe protecting people.
It's a derivative of, not derivative, but, it's related to SARS. We have the same kind of labs that China has. And we're doing the same thing China is, but the idea is to find out if there's where it's going to go and if we can have a vaccine. I mean, this is why you would have these kinds of labs, folks. That's the idea, not to weaponize things. That's the idea. And China has had that lab for dozens of years. It's not a mystery, but it's not supposed to get out.
Yeah. And I know that the whole issue about vaccines are controversial as well, because I think the vaccines have retroviruses in them, and of course they've got other toxins as well, and that can cause all sorts of issues. And I think that there are many people who think, oh, well, vaccine, it's, we're going to eradicate it that way, and then things will get back to normal. What's your perspective, Lee, on how we sort of get to our new normal where people can be healthy and thrive?
There's a channel just given, and I'm sorry, I don't remember. There's so many we do, that this has actually been addressed. And Kryon said, we are so used to going to the outside, getting a vaccine, we want the pill, not understanding. First of all, you do understand, don't you, that whenever this vaccine comes along, it's good for maybe this year, but what happens is the virus mutates. It may not be good for the next wave.
Right.
The viruses seem to surface about every 7 years or whatever it is, SARS, all these, and you realize they mutate. So whatever you've got today, and we have this Band-Aid idea because we've grown up with it. You have an ailment, you take a pill. You have something, whatever. And Kryon says, you understand that the approach should be this. What can you do naturally with your immune system so you simply won't get it no matter what?
Right.
And that is the thrust of today. There is, if I can give you, just a little, this would be advertising, but it's not, it's for free. Kryon.com/uplift.
Okay.
Will to a page on for the soul with free videos. And one of those is Dr. Todd Awakaitis giving you every day over the shelf stuff that will boost your immune system that nobody's talking about, because people are looking for the drug. They're not looking to boost the immune system. I predict that we'll have a situation where there'll be an aha, where the thrust will be our immune system, so we won't catch stuff, instead of the outside vaccines and pills and all of these things that we have always gone to. I mean, what a concept. How about we stop it before it starts?
And that also is a very positive way of dealing with it, because if we're automatically protected through our own, natural immune system, then what do we have to fear?
We have an immune system that's never seen this before. And so we are not aware of some of the things that perhaps we should have been taking that are natural, that will boost an immune system so it would not be near as vulnerable for even the new things. This is where we're coming from. An immune system that was so strong that it's going to react. Now, would it catch the flu? Maybe, but it's not going to be the killer flu, and that's the difference.
Right.
We may have a flu season, but not a killer flu season. Thank you very much.
And I know Dr. Todd is great, and it's wonderful that you did that interview with him, and it's on your website. But can you, for the purpose of our listeners right now, can you just talk about a couple of the things that he suggested to boost our immune system? I
wish I could, but he is so smart, and there's so much that he said. So what we did is to create a document that outlines everything talked
Oh,
about, gives
great.
all of the chemistry, and it is available, and it's on, when you watch his program, the URL for the document is there, so you can go to it on the internet
Great.
and see what he's talking about and see item by item.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't follow many channelers. I just have to be honest about that. I've found that I have to be careful because I want to keep my own natural channel open. But I do listen to several of your channelings, and I love the fact that you put them on your website for free. Mm-hmm. So anybody can access these things on Kryon.com, which I think is wonderful.
Can I just tell you, I'll just open a subject, and then it's just a soundbite. Kryon.com/free audio. Hundreds of them, hundreds of hours since 2005, all free. You don't have to even leave an email, just all free. But what has happened is that I stayed away from YouTube in the beginning, and I realized that it's really captured the crowd. There's thousands of these things on YouTube that I've never put there. People are they're monetizing them. They're giving placards where they say, the end of the world is here, and then you go to his Kryon talking about something else completely, and there's an ad. We're going to clean that up, folks, and I'm just to tell you we're working on it, and I'm aware of it, and we're going to go to YouTube in a integrity way.
Great. And I'm just starting to get these shows and some of my own work up on YouTube as well. It's, maybe a little behind, but it's what people like to watch.
Yeah. And also, could I tell you something? As you said, I just want to echo it, is that years ago, I was told by Kryon, don't read other metaphysical material, any of it.
Oh,
because there's no delete key in your brain, and so you want to stay pure. You just said the same thing in so many words a moment ago.
Yeah. And at one point I got guidance to stop reading those books. And of course now doing the show, I'm reading just about at least one book a week. But I'm also far more discerning now. I think that it's kind of like being an impressionable kid versus being a less impressionable adult. When you've gone through your own maturation process, sort of on the psychospiritual realm, then you can have the proper boundaries. You can discern, what fits and what doesn't.
Right.
So I had that same advice of not paying attention to that other stuff. But it's hard for people to do because people yearn, they're seeking, as opposed to allowing and paying attention. And there's a big difference between the attachment versus just sort of allowing things to come. So Lee, I know that Kryon talks a lot about this, I hate to say this, but the new age that we're heading into. What are some of the positive things that Kryon suggests we're opening to?
We're opening to evolution. And it's an evolution that was brought forward years and years ago in 99. I think that Jan Tober and I wrote the Indigo Children book. It's the beginning of watching an evolution that nobody expected. It's an evolution of human consciousness and human nature. Human nature has always been thought of as static. It never moves. This is what it is. And I mean, that's what's taught in schools. This is human nature, period. And that's because it never has changed in eons. Suddenly, since 2012, it has. And not only that, but we're starting to see it just in society. I could give you chapter and verse, but I'll just tell you, what about the Me Too movement? How long has this been going on? I want to ask you, every woman, how long has this been going on? What have you noticed?
All of my life,
All of your life. Well, how about your grandma's life? How about her grandmother's life and her grandmother's life? It's the way of it. It's human nature, and nobody ever got ahead. No woman could ever speak out for all of the reasons that never, ever changed, even through our lives. And bam, suddenly it's opening up. What about the abuse of children in the church? Suddenly it's opening up. There's something happening. There's an integrity issue that is starting to raise to the future, to the place where it's okay. That is a change of the paradigm of human nature, of life. It's relationships, human to human. We haven't had that expected war for 75 years. We were supposed to be dead by now. If you look
Yeah.
at scripture, if you take a look at Nostradamus, we're not supposed to even be here. Something has happened. So this is the evolution, what Kryon says, affect the way we do politics, the way we react to each other. And that is also going to be reflected in something else, inventions. Here they come. I want to tell you, Kryon has talked about things that we really need right now for, I would say, decades. And he's talked about it, about the electricity production and the grid. He's talked about the desalinization of water, all with magnetics. And people have actually come forward and says, this is really stupid. It's fake. It'll never happen. I mean, when Kryon talks about the fact that we're close to no more batteries. I mean, something's happening.
Wow.
Something big is happening. There's a show that I just did. I'm editing it now. If you remember this, kryon.com/uplift, that show is going to be on here, and it's going to talk about the reality of those inventions that are happening right now. Most people don't even know about it being manufactured right now. Most people don't know about it, and it's extremely Kryon-esque. And the people who are doing it actually got together because they heard Kryon channels. So
That's
this is something
exciting. Oh,
it is exciting.
Gives me chills.
Can you imagine having a small unit on the top of a building that supplies all of its electricity?
Lee, I'm so excited about the good news, the technological advances, the evolution of human nature. I mean, that's huge. What other good news do you have for us based on your assessment of what's going on and Kryon's teachings?
I think the best news is we really do have I'm speaking your language. We have internal resources to get out of fear and anxiety and heal ourselves. And we are not really accepting that. It's been around a very long time, and metaphysical people have taught this forever. But the evolution also is not just our consciousness. It's going to be also within our immune system, also within revelations of things that we can do for ourselves that we've never known before. And especially right now, people are in trouble. They're in fear. We can talk about the future all you want to. You can talk about the future, but they're in fear now. People are worried. They are anxious. So right this minute, Kryon is talking about grasping on to something. It's time. Maybe now you go to zero. Maybe now, and that is that around us we have help, and we don't have to go someplace for it. We're trapped in our homes, so you can't even go to the doctor, and you can't even go to the self-help person. There is help around us. Totally. There's a number of ways Kryon has says that you can go quiet and find it. It's almost like, honestly, your own soul had its hand out saying, when are you going to realize that the veil is just you? It's your attitude, your perspective of where that wall is, where you can't go. And it's available. And so this is the kind of thing. There's a lot of benevolence here, a lot.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we have to go to this place, or we only go to this place when we're kind of pushed there. I think about people who have health crises. I had my own decades ago, and it kind of pushed me in a different direction and allowed me to get to this place of shifting my perspective, getting to this place of allowing instead of control. And now I think about how, we realize we don't really have the kind of control we thought we did. And our expectations have to change, or else we're just going to be so sad and so frustrated. So how do we shift in a way that allows us to move forward in a positive way that helps us create a new normal that is filled with more of what we want, like when we really get down to the human connection, the spiritual connection, the abundance that is here on our planet? How do we head that direction when we're in a place of fear?
It's got to happen with a perception shift. This is something we have to work on, and I will give you the one of the idea is that the Kryon has given even in a couple of the parables. He said that you expect things every single day based upon what has happened in the past.
Right.
And what that does is to paint a picture that you expect, and therefore you actually create. Now, this is a tough call. If you don't believe in some of these metaphysical principles, then, you might as well just leave the show. But I'll tell you, there is scientific evidence now that what we think actually may change the things that are chance around us. I'm talking about real evidence of this.
Yeah.
And so what you expect and what you create, it's like you're writing a menu. What's going to happen to you today? I'm going to get up. I'm going to be depressed. Bad things are going to happen. The news is going to tell me stuff. My partner's going to be angry. The kids are going to be angry, whatever. It's same old, same old. It's just what happened yesterday. Woe is me. And that's a menu. And then you wake up and you think of some angel going and says, well, here's what you ordered. And that's what you live. What if your menu now is different? What if you're going to order new things? So what I'm talking about is you literally, the night before you go to sleep, say, tomorrow I expect benevolence. Tomorrow I expect good things. Tomorrow, are you ready for this? I'm going to work with my inner child, the kid that remembers happiness and good things. Yes. And I am going to be an example for my family. Can I also tell you something else that's controversial?
Yes, please.
Right with you?
Please.
All right.
Yes, anytime.
And I hope my audio doesn't cut out.
Yeah.
I think that in America, in Canada, in our culture, that this is falling mostly harder on the women than the men. And that's because suddenly the women are, they have the kids at home, they may have to homeschool, they're cooking more, families may be coming together. They're responsible for what they always were, even if it's a working woman. Now you're at home. You've got perhaps a partner who's worried about their job. They're depressed, and it just gets worse. So what I'm suggesting is for the women to probably have to be the first ones to see this perception and set a standard. The kids will notice, your partner will notice, all this stuff. What if you started an attitude shift where you didn't expect bad things? It's hard to be depressed when you're with somebody who's not. You probably, if you're in a relationship, you realize you help each other. If somebody is there and they're not depressed, it helps you. You go to a doctor for this, it helps you. You watch a funny show and you laugh, it helps you. This is what we're speaking of. So you change your perception and your attitude about your reality. What do you expect? What's your menu going to be tomorrow? And this is how I've lived for all of these years. I know my reality has shifted. Can I just also tell you something I tell my people? You talk about controlling your own reality and your own future. I do this for a living. I travel. I go, I'd be in Seattle with you now.
Right.
I can't. Right. We do 30 shows a year in Canada and in the States. I travel to all of them. I go by airplane. I've done this now for 20 years. I have never missed a meeting. What do you think the odds of that are? I travel by air. So airplanes don't fly, weather's in the way. What are the odds? And what I have always said every single time is, I'm going to be there. I know I will, because there's always a way to be there. I've never missed a meeting. I have written that on my menu, and it's against all odds. Luck has nothing to do with it. Yeah. I have everything to do with it. And this is just a little tiny vignette of what we can do for ourselves in our lives.
So I think sometimes, though, when we create our menu, there's a step along the way that some people are very uncomfortable with, and that is we have to begin to face what's really going on in our lives. I think about couples who are quarantined together right now, who've been living these separate lives and really aren't happy together, and suddenly they're having to face this dysfunctional relationship. Or, people who are sort of emotionally separated from their kids because it's more convenient, and they're realizing that they've really missed the connection now that their kids are home. They've got something they didn't have before. So how do we move forward when we're having to face some uncomfortable facts?
You call it forced solution if you want to. I think there's going to be books written later. The virus, meet your children.
Yes.
And there's, here it comes. This is forced solution. So when you have multiple solutions to anything worldwide, can you see how that might affect all of us? Forced solution. You're not going to come out of this the same, folks. If you have got a relationship that doesn't work and this forces you to do one of two things: make it work if it's possible, or get out of it. And so you're going to have to go to two places. You can't just go back and have it the same, can you? Do you really want to say, okay, we're dysfunctional, okay, the virus says we can go, let's stay dysfunctional? I don't think so. I mean, some will. But most of us, when things are in front of us that show themselves and come to a head, there are decisions being made. So it's a tough time. But out of that time is going to come solutions. Imagine the differences right now. I'm going to take a look at the number of people who are going to come together that never would have in a relationship, that they're going to sit down and look at each other and go, this hasn't worked, but I still love you. How can we make it work? This hasn't worked, but I still love you. Let's not split up. Can we do this? Can we do this? And both of you can. I love this. So one cannot go, no, and slam the door and leave. You're going to have to look at each other in the eye and say, okay, are we still in love or not? And what does that mean? You look to children differently because now they've met you in a different way. They're with you all the time. Homeschooling is very interesting. You get into teaching your children something that the teachers and the pros have always done, and here you are doing it. That changes that relationship. Even the siblings having together,
Yes.
Having to be together.
I homeschooled one of my two kids, and then eventually he was taking classes outside of the home, and by high school, he was in high school full time. But I was kind of surprised at the way other parents didn't have the same kinds of relationships with their children. At least many didn't. People who didn't homeschool, it was like this separation, this psychological separation that was there. And people would say, oh, I can't wait till the vacation's over so my kids go back to school. And I'm thinking, I love my time with my kids. So it's, I'm sure that there are people who are being driven crazy right now because they're having to deal with too much, including the demands of teaching their children. But there's also this aspect of connection. And really, when you look at it, it's just this fleeting time while our children are young. And then it's gone.
Our society right now, especially with speaking to younger adults, is so interesting. You both have to work and the kids go to school. And even if you give them activities, you're shuttling them around.
Yes.
And it's the same old. It's a paradigm that gets you into a rut. And you think you're just doing fine, but now you're realizing perhaps when this all gets back to normal and you still both work, how about scheduling a time for all of you to get together and talk, or get together and do something more fun than just shuttling them off to learn something or whatever's going on. And this is going to bring that to a head because it creates a real healthy relationship when you're starting to look at your children differently because you're finding out things. They're smart. Parents are human in there that has something to say, and this is what parents are starting to see. And then the relationship between husband and wife, in that where you're both working and you're both shuttling the kids around and doing this, that suffers. It suffers because you don't really have the kind of together time with or without the children. And you might start scheduling that. And that is the kind of thing that is so healthy that we may then pull out of this. I'm quite sure there's going to be books written about it, a lot of them. But that is what is forcing us into facing situations that are going to create solution.
And I think too about how within our educational system, there's been so much focus on learning and performing and less open time for creativity. And I'm thinking that the children are no longer overbooked, probably, being homeschooled. It allows this time and space to just be and allow their creativity to flow, as opposed to being on the schedule and having to work so hard, as opposed to being children and exploring their reality, their inner reality and the outer reality.
Well, the education profession, they're going through this too. And so they may very well come out with some new ideas. I hope they do, because they're in the same rut. It's not their fault. They just following the rules. They have a paradigm that they've always had, and that they follow. And there's just so many teachers that would love to branch out, but they can't. They can't because of the rules of the school or the paradigm that they have to follow. And we know this because we talk to them all the time. And so, and it's very interesting. A lot of them are indigos now, which means that they're starting to evolve, and they want to make some shifts and changes. It's a really good time when we come back. Kinds of things work.
Before we go any further, Lee, I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about your Seattle event. I put it in air quotes, which I was so excited that you were going to be in my neck of the woods, because I know you come up here like every other year, and I always love to attend. But you're offering it to not only Seattleites, but to anybody around the world, right, this weekend? Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah. Can I just tell you that, I have a 2020 program, and basically it's the same program, and I go from city to city to city to city and give it. And I'm very aware that it is similar, but we've spiced it up with different speakers and things like that. And for the first time, I'll tell you what we've chosen to do, just for those who are watching from the Seattle area, is we're coming to your town virtually, all right? And we're going to pretend we're there, and we're going to be, like, for instance, this show is a result of coming to Seattle. And the other things that we have are our host, Paula, a new host, is ready to greet and all that. Just as though we were there, we're going to put on that exact show. When we do East Coast shows, we're going to do one for New York soon. We do it on East Coast time. But what is happening is that we encourage those in the area who would have come to also then come. And then it seems to be also now open to anybody. And so we're getting a lot of people from overseas. But I also tell you, the teaching modules that I would do, or some of the others that do, are very, very similar. Some people are coming anyway because they like the energy. The channeling is always different. So against all odds, we're actually getting some repeats. But it's really basically for you. It's for you and your area and Seattle, and everything is happening there. That's the whole idea. It's expanded even more than we thought it would. And we're doing our best to create the very same show, the very same people, plus a couple of perhaps special guests that couldn't normally join us to be there. So it's happening this weekend. It's on my site if you want to see the link. And we also, as far as, let's talk commercially, we have something, it's a benevolent pay. It's like a pay what you can for some people.
And I love that. I love that. I saw that on your website this morning.
Yeah. And we also have, and those who would normally pay the normal price, it helps support us. It gets the free channels online. This is how we make our living. So there's a whole gamut, and that's working as well. So we're trying to recognize what's going on here economically, as well as recognize that we can't be there in person, and doing our best to give you 2 days of no virus talk. How about that?
Although I'm sure there'll be some questions about it, but in terms of the higher level perspective.
Your show does that, and the channels talk about it as well, and we do discuss it, but it's not like turning on the news.
oh yeah. It's horrible.
But thank you for asking. Yeah.
So that's Kryon.com, Kryon.com. And if you click on events, you can find your way down to the Seattle event. Click on Seattle and you find your way to it.
Actually, Seattle's the first event because it's the next one. It's in a couple of days.
I know. Yeah. It's really exciting. And I'm kicking myself that I didn't go to the Iceland event, though, because Iceland's on my bucket list. So I think the next time you go to Iceland, I want to be there.
We went during the winter because the Northern Lights showed themselves more during the winter. And we also realized it was be cold. And I knew it. So I went to Colorado to get cold weather gear because I live in Southern California.
Right.
And but it's day glow color. So I don't, Colorado had it, and I didn't get as cold as I thought I would, even in well below zero temperatures. But in the summer, It's still cold, but not as cold, and
Yeah.
every bit as beautiful or more. So we're going to go during the summer, maybe in year two. Watch my
That
site
sounds
for that.
great.
Oh,
That
everything's on my
sounds
site.
great. Yeah, and I love that you go to all these adventurous places, and you do events at Mount Shasta too, which is a little bit more local, and you've been to Israel, and you go all over the world. And I can't think of a more positive way to see the world and to be with like-minded people. And
You know what we're going to
wisdom.
do in January, and I think that's far enough away. Something I've always wanted to do. We're going to Cuba.
Oh, that's exciting.
Americans still really are not allowed to go to Cuba on their
Right.
own. And we have a way of doing it through the embassy and with an educational tour. We have to go to certain places and they allow us in. Totally legal as long as we're allied with a specific government agency. We got it all figured out thanks to our friend Elon Cohen in Shaloha production.
Yeah.
And so we're going to Cuba in January. Yeah.
That's exciting. Oh my goodness.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so we're having to shift to a new normal. So much is getting illuminated. You know, you call it forced solution. I love that phrase, Lee.
Yeah.
For us as individuals, like, you know, the things that you do and the things that I do could certainly, you know, do them remotely. Many people are going to have to redefine their lives, redefine their careers. How would you suggest somebody facing a difficult reality right now choose what they're going to be doing next and choose their direction based on this new normal?
It's about something that we teach, and also we have a wonderful channeler that I work with, Marilyn Harper, that she teaches as well. And that is this, is that we don't expect it, but part of this thing that I told you about, I've never missed a meeting, I have to have guidance. And the guidance doesn't come from above or some angel who comes down. And I'm not getting it from Kryon, I'm getting it from my own intuition. So when you know that there is something called women's intuition, it is more active in a woman than a man. That is biological and scientific and can be proven. I can't believe somebody did a study on it. I don't know what they paid for the study, but I could have told them.
Yes, I know. It's those left-right lobe connections that women have more of. Yeah, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to say to answer your question is that in this scheme that we call the spiritual scheme that we have, the things that we never were told or the things that we're developing, our intuition can guide us if we trust it. And if we say, okay, guidance or spirit or whatever, tell me which direction, and then go with the first impression that you have. It's the muscle that we've learned to exercise. I am so proud I have women's intuition. I have thank you. I have exercised this muscle enough to develop those kinds of things. Anybody can, any human can. And the more you exercise this, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow, but I will know tomorrow. People hate that. I mean, they hate that. You know, the Boy Scout motto is be prepared. And so how can you be prepared when you don't know what you're going to do? If you trust the intuition will guide you there, maybe even last minute, all of a sudden, the guidance and the trust that you have almost like it throws a switch. And that switch then lets you see it better, understand it better, and the road appears. Over and over and over in my life, the road appears. And it's not because I'm super lucky. It's because I've allowed it, I trust it, I expect it. It's part of my menu. So the answer is intuition. It is there to help us. And think of it, intuition is connected to the field, to innate, the things that we cannot perceive in 3D. That's what intuition is. It gives you information that you couldn't know. That's why it's so great. Trust it more. It will guide you to these places that we don't really understand or know. So you're right to be concerned about what am I going to do? But could you relax a minute and say, I don't have to worry about it because when I get there, I'll know? This is a parable of the missing bridge that Kryon gave years and years and years ago. It's the same message. This is a new normal, folks. This is not what you expected. This is you trusting a force, your soul, whatever, to guide you to places that are going to work because it sees the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you understand this. And some will say, well, I still don't get it. I understand that it took me as a guy a long time to get it. When I did, I was so proud that it worked. And it does work. I write my menu every day. In March, I wrote my menu. I'm going to start a studio. I'm going to get this going. I'm going to cobble my nerd friends together so we can stream for as long as it takes and do it with quality and find the speakers and be able to present good solutions to people on the air, even though I can't go there. And it's worked. And so this was an intuitive, it just totally intuitive flash I had.
Uh-huh. One of the things that I've found frustrating as somebody who tries to live sort of with an organic flow, I've got a lot of freedom with my time these days. And, if I feel like writing, or I'm going to be working on my website, or, suddenly it feels right to go to the garden store to get certain plants for my yard, whatever it is, it's this natural flow. I'm feeling a little frustrated because society has certain constraints right now for, most of us here in the United States. And like going to the garden store, I have to have an appointment.
I know exactly what you're saying.
It's like, so it's kind of unnerving for me because I can't be in the same kind of flow that I once was. How do we deal with these constraints of society and still be in that flow, that connection, the choices that we make?
We can't, because we are constrained. Just as you said, this is not normal. It's atypical. We are boxed in. We are reading books. Ta-da! And people will say, I discovered Netflix. Or in other words, there are things that we can now do, perhaps that we only did in our leisure time, that might help this time when we're constrained. You might do things like you've never done. And I say with books and reading biographies and things that you say, I'm not really sure. Try it. Get into it. It's good for hours of entertainment and maybe even education. There are many things we can do during this time to help. Can I just say, as your teacher today, I'm bored. Is that right to say it? I'm still got things to do, but I can't go. Can I just tell you something funny here in California?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Our governor, 4 days ago, closed the parks and the beaches. You're a little late, Governor. You just did this just when we're coming out going, I'm going to go to the park and the beaches. So you're going to have a problem here with our population. Californians they pretty well do what they want. So we want out. We want out. We want out. And
we need the nature. We need to be out in nature. And it's
yes, right.
And I've seen like the really crowded beaches, and I understand that that's not social distancing.
Yeah, but there is. We are actually adults. We might actually be able to go to the parks and the beaches and not touch each other. Maybe we can.
Right.
Maybe we can even maintain the 6-foot rule. Maybe if you give us a chance. But right now, you're just shutting us out.
So, do you think that the scientists are going to find a way to mitigate this, or do you think that we're going to be forced into a situation where we're going to, it's like a forced solution to deal with our own immune system so that we can navigate this?
Yeah, well, you're asking whether there's going to be another pandemic. I mean, there's those who say this one won't stop. There's going to be another wave, and there's going to be another wave, and they're the doom and gloomers. And I'll tell you, these are the ones that the news has sought out. I can just see them in their boardrooms right now. Let's get some books of the people who are the ones who predict the worst. Yeah, we eventually probably will have a vaccine for this. It's coming. Then you'll have your choice to take it. But then in the future, what happens when it returns and it's called something else? I think the answer is the immune system.
Unfortunately, our hour has flown by, Lee. I'm so grateful for the positive, uplifting messages you've got. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I know we didn't talk about a lot of things, but we talked about enough good things.
Yes. And I want to thank you for joining us here today. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you'd like to empower yourself to step further into your vibration of change, please visit my website at christineupchurch.com, where you can learn more about my insights, upcoming events, and private sessions.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of KKNW, its management, or other advertisers. Contests are the responsibility of the host of this program and not KKNW. This is Alternative